assistant director from 1992 to 2005, and after leaving State Bill, he's been active with the Sierra Club.
My name is Geoff Young. I'm proud and happy to be carrying the flag today for the Kentucky Democratic Party. Some of you are probably registered Democrats, and so far you haven't heard from anyone you can vote for next Tuesday.
Education in Kentucky, not only at our primary schools, but also our post-secondary schools and our technical schools. Chris McDaniel and I have come up with a plan, the Comer-McDaniel Plan for Higher Education, which focuses on workforce development. It incentivizes students to go to technical school and get certificates. It focuses on having better communication between the employer, the job creators, and the education officials to make sure that we're teaching the right curriculum at our technical schools in the state so that we can have a highly skilled and trained workforce to meet your demands and to meet the demands of future employers in the state. Part of that plan involves providing a tax credit to employers, a $2,000 tax credit to employers that hire recent graduates from technical school in the state. When you look at the budget, and I know we have a lot of state legislators here in the audience, and I appreciate your all's attendance and your leadership in Frankfort. We make a significant investment in public education. 58% of the general fund budget in Kentucky goes for public education. We have to make sure we're getting a good return on that investment. And when we invest that money in a student to go from kindergarten all the way through technical school or regional.
And so energy efficiency, eliminating waste is the cheapest, quickest, most reliable, most resilient, most secure, if you will, source of energy that exists. And Kentucky, because of our historic low-cost coal, has not excelled in the area of energy efficiency. There are exceptions.
And there's a lot of waterfront I'd like to cover today. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful that you selected Kentucky for your businesses, your manufacturing businesses. I likely wouldn't have met my wife if it wasn't for you. My father moved our family to Kentucky. He was an industrial engineer, and he moved us here to go to work in manufacturing 50 years ago this year. He went to work for General Electric. He was an industrial engineer. Even back 50 years ago, they had advanced manufacturing engineering, and he was involved in that. I have a brother that's an industrial engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I have a brother-in-law who's a mechanical engineer. We understand and appreciate manufacturing, what you do, and you have my commitment that as governor, if I have that opportunity to do that, Kentucky will remain a state that builds things. It's important for Kentucky. It's important for our economic future. In fact, it's especially important today. It's important today because we are, according to economists, we are 100,000 jobs short of where we need to be in Kentucky for families to be secure.
I heard one recommendation for nuclear power. Well, that's a sure recipe for higher electric rates. Building a nuclear power plant in the year 2015, 2017, any state that tries that is in for trouble. It's just going to price themselves out of the market. Amory Lovins, perhaps one of the foremost experts in energy efficiency in the world. He works at Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado. Said nuclear energy is a future technology whose time has passed. He also called it a nuclear weapons producing factory that produces a little electricity as a byproduct.
Has practiced law for over 30 years, and most recently he was elected, that was in 2004, to the Kentucky Supreme Court, representing the 7th Supreme Court District. He's since retired, and I presume you're a full-time candidate this time. Well,
thank you.
It's always great to be among a good group of friends, even if they're not yours. But you will be. You know, I've been in this business long enough, and I've been in this race long enough to know I'm not your candidate yet, but I will be. And I'll tell you why. Because, you know, we just got to use common sense in Kentucky. But let's look at the world. Let's look at the world as it's changing. Let's look at the reasons they're telling us we got to change because of CO2 or nitrous oxide or something. And let's understand that in the last decade, because the pressures put on us out of Washington, D.C., we have cut CO2 emissions in the United States by 8%. That's fine. But the world went up by 40. So the net effect is the world went up 32 while we transferred your jobs from your sister brother corporations across national boundary lines so you can take your jobs and your products over there and then come back and sell them to us. And we don't have as much money as we used to have because we don't have that job. You know, you're talking about coal. Nick's a good friend of mine. Nick knows coal. He made his living off of coal. There's other coal people in here. By 2040, we use 8 billion tons a year right now. By 2040, we're going to be burning 12 billion in the world. A 50% growth in coal, and they're trying to close us out of the coal market now when it produces the cheapest fuel in the world, and it fuels and funds your factories. I think our rate is 7.26 cents a kilowatt in Kentucky the last time I checked it. There's only 4 states in the United States that beat us in low-cost power, and 3 of them are in the Northwest, and they got almost 90% plus hydro. How Louisiana beats us, I've got to go down there and find out, but that's one of the other 4. I guess they quit firing off a lot of the gas and just taking it free. But let's look at what common sense would do. Number one, you want good skilled labor? Put me down there in Frankfurt. Let me take all my skills training centers around the state and divide them up into regions and say, wait a minute, hold it, I want all these manufacturers in here with you all. You're educators. I want my manufacturers in here telling us what we need to train for long term in this region. I'm not training you short term jobs. I will train you long term jobs. And I'll have real skills training in the various regions. Down in northern Kentucky, you all are 250 people short a year with all the money you put into it. And you got an aging workforce, you're losing. You're getting 250 and you're missing 250. I can give you those 250 people with my plans. Transportation. The old rates used to be 1 cent per ton mile on water. 5.5 intermediate trucking per ton mile on water. 7 to 7.5 depending on the profit margin of the railroad. But railroad. I know those things have changed a little bit. But I know you still beat everybody with 60% if you receive your products and materials by water. Come on. In 2 to 3 years, the Panama Canals will be finished. The connexes are coming through to the Caribbean. We bring them up Mobile through Tombigbee, or we bring them to New Orleans and bring them up, and look at all the savings.
May 19th. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Lexington, Fayette County for the last 33 years. Love it here. Originally came from Massachusetts. Bachelor's in economics from MIT, master's in mechanical engineering from UMass Amherst, and then when I got to Lexington, got another master's in agricultural economics from UK. My whole professional career has been in the energy field. I worked in Frankfurt for 14 years. Most of that time as Assistant Director of the State Energy Office. It was called the Kentucky Division of Energy at that time. I see a number of people here I worked with during that time. Great to see you again. The mission of the Kentucky Division of Energy, or any state energy office in any of the 50 states, is to promote energy efficiency, renewable sources of energy, diversify any given state's energy system. But I focus mainly on efficiency and utility company regulation in order to promote energy efficiency. No one benefits from waste. And so energy efficiency, eliminating waste, is the cheapest, quickest, most reliable, most resilient, most secure, if you will, source of energy that exists. And Kentucky, because of our historic low-cost coal, has not excelled in the area of energy efficiency. There are exceptions in this room, I'm sure. Your companies, many of you have recognized how good a deal energy efficiency is when you invest in it. But speaking overall, big picture for the state as a whole, we are not a particularly energy efficient state. The silver lining to that cloud is that we have a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can still harvest. And so we can learn from what other states have done that have had historically high energy prices. We can learn from them, institute both technological fixes, better design methods, and regulatory changes that will encourage energy efficient design, new construction, and retrofits. So the question was given, how can we continue our reliable, affordable energy, and what strategic investments should we make? I would say that the most important initiative or focus of the young masters, Jonathan Masters is here, by the way, if you want to stand up. Maybe it's, yeah, there he is. My running mate, next Lieutenant Governor of Kentucky. Foremost priority will be to remove the barriers to improving energy efficiency and to investing capital, scarce capital is always scarce, in energy efficiency improvements. And we will promote things like the Kentucky Pollution Prevention Center, the continuing the energy office activities, and most of that activity that I worked on in energy efficiency was funded by the federal government. 80% from U.S. Department of Energy, only 20% from the Kentucky General Fund. So in terms of getting things done, we were one of the most efficient agencies in Frankfurt. The strategies we've heard from the four Republican candidates today, really, you could sum it up, all of the above. Exploit every energy source that exists, no matter how expensive it is. I heard one recommendation for nuclear power. Well, that's a sure recipe for higher electric rates. Building a nuclear power plant in the year 2015, 2017, any state that tries that is in for trouble. It's just going to price themselves out of the market. Amory Lovins, perhaps one of the foremost experts in energy efficiency in the world. He works at Rocky Mountain Institute in Colorado. Said nuclear energy is a future technology whose time has passed. He also called it a nuclear weapons producing factory that produces a little electricity as a byproduct. And that's true if you look internationally at the countries that have built nuclear power plants. All too often, a decade or two later, they've suddenly got a nuclear weapon or two. Overall, the governor has more to do with energy, with the competitiveness and prosperity of the manufacturing sector than merely energy policy. I would agree with Paul Craig Roberts, former official who worked for the Reagan administration. To restore the economy requires that offshoring be reversed and and the jobs brought back to the United States. I agree with that. And I especially focus on manufacturing jobs. And to do that, we need to change corporate tax structure so as to encourage and reward manufacturing in this country, in Kentucky, and not subsidize offshoring of some of our best jobs. Your concerns are my concerns. Manufacturing is critical to our economy, as is agriculture. Industries that produce things. We can't simply survive on a transactional, stockbroker, Wall Street economy, insurance, finance sector. It doesn't produce anything. It's not sustainable. So I appreciate your vote on next Tuesday if you're a Democrat. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. I would like to thank all the participants. And after we're really wrapping up here in a minute, but I'm sure there are many people in the audience who maybe have a few questions for you. If you could hang around for a few minutes and speak with them, it would be great. Is there any announcements or anything you need to make? And let me say thank you. I was very pleased to be able to be the moderator today. It was pretty easy because everybody acted like total gentlemen and everybody was on time. The management of the event is very on top of their game. So thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
The taxpayers of Kentucky. Our plan incentivizes students to also stay in Kentucky so we can develop the workforce and we can grow the economy. With respect to energy, we're focused on all types of energy. We have to develop our infrastructure in Kentucky for natural gas. I'm a strong supporter of the Keystone Pipeline. I've worked and communicated closely with the utilities in the state. As governor, I'll do everything I can to further develop the infrastructure. Let me be very clear, I'm a friend of coal. I believe there's a future in coal. I talked to a lot of coal executives in the state, in both Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky. I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that we continue to have low utility rates in the state, but we also have to diversify our energy economy in Kentucky. We're committed to doing that in a Comer-McDaniel administration. With respect to manufacturing, job, workforce development, low utility costs, we also want to improve the business climate in the state. We have taxes in this state that hold us back. Taxes like an inventory tax. I'm sure many of you have to pay that if you have competitors in other states, especially the surrounding states. They don't have to pay that tax. We need comprehensive tax reform in Kentucky that focuses on the taxes that hold us back. When I say comprehensive tax reform, I mean tax reform that lowers taxes. We need to have a purpose with tax reform. The difference in what my tax reform proposal will be and what Steve Beshear and Jerry Edwards' tax reform proposal is their goal was to increase revenue to be able to pay for a bigger government. Our goal is to not impede our businesses and our manufacturers in the state so that we can grow our economy and create jobs. Jobs are created in the private sector, and I understand that. I'll close by thanking you again for the investment that you've made in Kentucky. Many of you I've spoken with over the past 8 months as a candidate for governor. I know you're frustrated. My message to you is help is on the way. I invite you to our website, jamescomer.com. I was a state representative for 11 years. I've been Commissioner of Agriculture for the past 4 years. We focused on reducing the size of government. We focused on creating jobs. The agriculture industry grew about 20% last year. We grew farm sales by 20%. I want to have that same mentality in the governor's office. I want to reduce government spending. I want to make government more efficient. I want to get government out of your way so that you can create more jobs and expand your businesses. And I think we can do that. I'm James Comer. Thank you for the invitation to be here today, and I look forward to seeing you many more times as this election progresses. Thank you all.
Okay, our next speaker is Hal Heiner. Louisville, and
Ohio states that surround us. We have tremendous advantages. I'll tell you just a little background in my life. Ended up getting a master's in civil engineering and went on into consulting engineering. So for the first dozen years of my life, became a partner in that firm. My name was in that firm for a while. Designed roads, bridges, water and sewer systems. Had an apartment part-time in Whitesburg in Letcher County doing mine land reclamation work. I've worked across the state. I understand infrastructure. I understand its importance to the economy. I understand its importance to you for bringing goods in and out of the state. In fact, I have a very limited view of central government on what's most important. I see it as a three-legged stool with education, public safety, and infrastructure being those three legs. Now there's another 97 plus items that state government's involved in, but I see them all on top of the stool. If we don't get those three right, we'll be in serious trouble. After my time in engineering, I left and went to work for a very large real estate development firm. They operated in 5 different states, and I had the opportunity to work in those states. Ultimately became the president for the commercial half of that company. And what I learned is that you can tell very, very quickly how government, if they're welcoming of new investment, of opportunity, if they're going to take a partnership approach to getting you through the permitting process, if they want you there. Or if the culture in their governments is more one, take a ticket, take a seat, we'll get to you, get to you when we can. You know, I've been on the trail. I believe in marathon campaigns. So I announced this campaign 62 and a half weeks ago. And I've been on the trail each week, county to county to county, talking to you and individuals across the state about what we need to do in this next administration. I want to share a couple of items on what you have told me. You've told me about the importance of energy prices here in Kentucky. In fact, the firm that I built, building business parks for manufacturers, distributors, office users, research users, as I've worked with those site search firms, they've told me the same. When they scorecard Kentucky on competitive advantages, low-cost power is number 1. We have an A+. We're second highest in the country. As people go to work in Georgetown, one of our largest manufacturers, Toyota, I believe if we were at that table when they made that final decision, low-cost power was a very significant competitive advantage they had in coming to Kentucky. Also, you've told me, and your economic firms that advise you, have told me they love the position, the location of Kentucky in the country. We're in the perfect location for you to ship and receive goods. I've also heard about work ethic of Kentuckians, strong work ethic, low-cost housing, lots to do. In fact, I know from hearing my father talk about it, General Electric would say it was easy to transfer people into Kentucky, but it was really hard to transfer them out because we have such a great state to raise a family. But I'll tell you what you've also told me, and what your advisors have told me, is that we have a capital that isn't open for business. That we've had a regulatory process in Kentucky that's old and slow. That we don't have the kind of partnership culture that the states that are moving ahead, fast-track permitting, partnership approach to help you through that process easily and quickly. I've also heard about our tax policies and how they're out of date. Inventory tax, I'm with an industrial automation firm down in Warren County. It tells me our suppliers group that they want close so they can have a quicker delivery of their product won't come to Kentucky because of an inventory tax. They were one of 4 states in the entire country still with that kind of tax. I've heard from you directly, from your manufacturers and from your financial advisors, that when it comes to manufacturing taxes, when you put a 150 horsepower electric motor in your facility, there's no tax when you put it in the first time, but there's sales tax when you replace it again. Different than other states that understand the importance of manufacturing. We have to have comprehensive tax reform. And I'll tell you the area that pains me the most that we're missing here in Kentucky for your future and the future of this state. And that's we are not preparing our workforce for your jobs. I can't tell you how many times I've heard again and again how we can't find welders, how we can't find people in tool and die. We can't find people with industrial certifications in advanced manufacturing technology. We can't find people in medical technology
your paramedics. And as I've traveled and been involved in education reform efforts for the last 20 years of my life, just civically, it's amazing what's happening in states all around us. They've changed their culture from K-12 to K-14. They've said, it's going to take those certifications before you graduate high school. You're going to have a certification or college credits under your belt. They're making it easy, financially, to move on with an education beyond high school. That's what we need to do in Kentucky. That's what we need to focus on in this next administration. You know, 93% of our power here in Kentucky comes from coal. It's why we are the second lowest priced energy state in the country. We have to hold on to coal. The other advantage of coal is that it's very reliable. We can stockpile. And what happens when the pressure drops in the natural gas pipeline? Your operations stop. People are hurting. The final chapter on energy is not written. If you look around the world, no day other than today has the world burned more coal for power generation than we burn today. We have a wrong-headed administration in Washington that's trying to make our country and Kentucky less competitive. I will tell you as governor, I won't stand for it. We need a governor that doesn't just talk the talk, but is willing to push the bully back, that is willing to join with other like-minded governors on a state sovereignty basis and say, in one area in particular, if we mine it here and we burn it here, it's none of your business. I want you to know, and thank you, I want you to know that as governor, I'm with you. I need you to expand. Kentucky needs to be the best place for your future when it comes time for expansion. So you have an educated workforce, we have low-cost power, and you have an administration in Frankfurt that says, let me help you through this process. And a governor that will be leading that effort. Thank you so much for having me here today.
With some crane capacity to exchange from the long haul coming up the Mississippi to you, transfer to the short haul. I've got to redesign some short haul delivery systems and put rollers on them so you can hook chains to them, you can hook cables to them and pull them out. Because I can't put a crane in every one of your factories. And a new industry, we need to build little water boards, like a hand. Each one of these is a factory. They've got an insert slip to their goods and materials. Right here, the hand section is where the short haul tugs are moving the stuff around and they put them in for you. You take that cable out there, hook it up, we put rollers. It's not the old barge system, but it'd be kind of like a small landing craft with rollers, and you pull them right up. Look at your savings. I mean, my God, all we have to do is think and work together. And on the energy, we've got no new coal systems coming online. The fluidized bed method. Come on. These old plants that they complain about up here on the river, they were built in the 1960s. We got plants now that can produce electricity at 3 cents a kilowatt wholesale. Now you're not getting it for 3 cents, but they're going to sell it for 3 cents. Wholesale. Coal-fired, and they burn biomass, wood chips, they burn our old stuff and help us clean it up. They buy premium coal and blend it, get 7,200 BTU per pound, and they produce coal at 3 cents a kilowatt wholesale, and they only have 1% of the emissions of these plants that we're shutting down on the river. Of Paradise, 2,200 megawatts are shutting down. 1% of the emissions and 10% of the water, which means I can move them upstream to the headwaters where the fuels are, and I can cut $3 and $3.50 transportation costs, and I can send you the electricity free by wire. But there will be a little charge. But I'll tell you, all we have to do is work on these things, and all your equipment. I've got 1 minute, coming up on 1 minute. Still got 2, I'm in good shape. I could double your engine life. I could cut your repair costs in half for all your work material. I just switch you over to natural gas. We've got to have coal and gas. And what little hydro we got. We got to have an entry plan like Virginia that mandates all of it. But all I have to do is, I'm going to have the governor involved in to start with. I want to build the service stations. 50% of the emissions we're finding, and I'm not giving EPA a plan because they don't have any constitutional right to tell us as a state what to do. They're asking us to agree, but we're not going to. They can regulate you, but not the state. But I want gas stations around here. I want natural gas capacity to double your engine life and cut your maintenance costs in half. But nobody's doing that. So I'm going to have to help do that. And then at some point in time, I'll recover my money from the state with a profit. So we can have that. But 50% of the emissions that we're dealing with right now in CO2 come from your vehicles. And gas has 1/3 of the CO2 emissions of the other carbon fuels. So we can work together to do all this and get away from everything. And keep in mind, it takes 10 units of gas to make 1 unit of coal. If you think gas is cheaper now at $3, you're right. The equivalent's $30, coal's 43 to 57. But run it up to $7 or $13 a thousand the way it was, and you look at the cost and your energy's going to go up. No, we're going to keep your energy down. We're going to make your transportation much cheaper. We're going to stand up for business because we want the jobs you've got. And we want more of them. We really and truly love you. And you are Kentucky. Because we can't feed our children and clothe them if you weren't here in this room. But you need to have somebody in Frankfurt that knows how to work with you and apply common sense on these transportation, these energy needs. And that's Will T. So thank you all for being so nice to us, and we all love you.